Welcome to the Revenue Builders Podcast with John McMahon and John Kaplan. In today's segment, we feature Bob Ranaldi, former Chief Revenue Officer, longtime sales leader, who currently advises CROs through his role at FTV Capital. He shares why great revenue leaders focus less on static metrics and more on the trends behind them. He explains why looking at a single month of pipeline or bookings can be misleading and why CROs and CEOs need to study the progression of key metrics over time. If you're a CRO, a founder, or a sales leader responsible for forecasting and revenue planning, this segment highlights why data trends, not snapshots, should guide your decisions. Let's dive in.
I think when we think about data, one of the things, and maybe you guys have a point of view on this, is that data is useful, but if you're looking at it in like a stagnant manner, it's like, okay, what are those metrics this month? Sort of interesting, but when you look at it based on the progression, are we improving? Are we going in the wrong direction? So thinking about it over a period of time is really important. That may come across as being obvious to the audience listening to this. But I do see that sometimes, even pipeline. Okay, we have $6 million of pipeline to work with this quarter. Well, how much did we have last quarter? What did we have the quarter before? How much did we convert? Like the devil's in the details in terms of the historical element of all those really important sales metrics.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And they're all interrelated. Like sometimes you can see, I keep adding sales reps. My sales productivity is still holding, but for every time I add a new sales rep, I'm not adding any new logos. So the future's not looking bright. Something's going to break. It looks like it's almost ready to break. That could be a leading indicator, that something's wrong. And I think what you're pointing out here is that between the CRO and the CEO, they need to use, data to drive their decisions and then also align from those decisions that they make on what the future goals need to be and be realistic about it based on data.
Totally. And yeah, please, John.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I just want to ask you about the report.
I'm on a line of thought, but I want you guys to weigh in here too. But and again, I say this with complete respect to these founders, in particular, these people that are running these businesses. But sometimes the mistake that is made is that where the data is not in the forefront, decisions are being made. So here's an example. There could be, we want to drive outbound funnel development. Therefore, we're going to build an SDR function. And the SDR function might just be getting to a point where it's starting to get to a point of providing a return. But because the data is not there, the founder or CEO or the company in general might say, okay, shut down the SDR organization, tell those 4 people they don't have jobs anymore. And you're just at the edge of starting to see that return. So the point is those leading indicators are really important in the form of data, like how many calls are we making, how many discovery meetings are taking place, how many are converting to SQLs and moving through the sales process. And some companies will listen to this and they've got this stuff nailed, but I can tell you there are some companies that don't. And so the data, really important. And I think that I often see situations where the measure of one's success is based on lagging data. Do we hit our bookings or not, or things of that sort. But there's so much information in the leading indicator form that gets overlooked oftentimes, and there's kind of a void of data in some cases.
Well, you also see it if the CEO and the CRO are not communicating. This happens in PE firms and VC firms, where let's say they had 10 fully ramped reps, and it's now November, and they're on a calendar fiscal year. CRO's not involved. They did 10 million average productivity, $1 million each. CEO goes into the meeting, comes out of the meeting, says, Bob, we're going to do 20 million next year. Bob says, how are you going to do 20 million when we did 10 million with 10 reps?
Yeah.
Then they realize that they made a mistake because they have to hire 10 people really fast, but there's a ramp time of 6 months. So they should have hired those people back in July. So now the CEO says to the CRO, well, just hire 10 reps now. And you're not going to get 10 good reps now. You're going to get some Bs and some Cs. The managers are going to take the aggregation of the sales reps' quotas. They're going to horsewhip the guys and the gals to make the number. They're not going to make the number in the first couple quarters. you're going to miss, productivity is going to be down, costs are going to be up, and you're going to have a really horrible board meeting. And that's only because the CEO and the CRO weren't in discussions as to, how are we going to align around future goals?
Yeah, and you taught me this many years ago, and I try to emphasize this point, which is it's important to make the numbers, not just so that the board, or that the operators within the business feel good, but because it's building momentum, and the morale is a relationship to the success of the company. So when you have these companies that have set the bar, and it's not even like a high goal, it's just maybe an unreasonable goal or unattainable goal, and they go quarters, in some cases years, without making the numbers. I think those companies have to kind of reorient themselves a little bit and think about like, okay, how is this impacting our morale? Because you can build momentum, string a few quarters together, and you're making your numbers quarter after quarter. It's amazing. And God knows we experienced that at PTC, John McMahon, under your leadership, when you got this, quarter after quarter after quarter, you get some serious wind in your sail, so to speak.
What about the 5-quarter report? Like for people listening, what should be on there? How should you get the data? Where should it come from? And how should it be used all the way up at the board level? The point I'm trying to get to is, can you kind of manage up, if you will, if you're a CRO, where you get everybody looking at the same things instead of every different board meeting, let's look at these 5 things, and now we're going to look at these 5 things. So they send you away, and you got kind of like rock management, where you go find some new rocks and then come back. Like, what advice do you have for CROs to really nail that and then you utilize it?
I love that point, because it does happen a lot. You're kind of scrambling, and all the work you're putting into the board meeting is just for the board meeting. Again, I don't know if this is great advice, but I say, listen, like what we look at in the board meeting shouldn't just be for that moment in time. It should be the way that you guys run your business. Like if you're not using this data to run your business, then shame on us for missing the mark. But I think I'd say a couple of things, Sean Kaplan. Like I think less is more. Like I don't think you need to have 50 measures. I mean, I think let's get some consensus and orientation around really the things that matter most. But they should be numerical. You know what I mean? It should be things like CAC. What's our customer acquisition costs? The GRR and NRR statistics are really important, making sure that those are being measured closely. LTV, sales efficiency, et cetera. Like those are examples of things that should be on a list of 6 to 8 really important measures. And, in terms of how you get those as a CRO, you should be getting contribution from finance. Like finance CFO should really like closely working with you on that, making sure that you and he or she are closely aligned on those goals, and that person is a mechanism to bring them forward. And maybe the last thing I would say, just on how do you pull that together, some companies will have their CRO trying to be something that he or she is not. Like they're super good hirers, they're great leadership skills, awesome in front of customers, and then they're trying to quickly become superstars when it comes to data. And in those cases, sometimes I will suggest that maybe have a rev ops person that can fill that void, can supplement the value that a CRO has. Like, let's not bring down the real value points in a CRO by trying to take him or her off to do some things that maybe a rev ops person could do or a finance person could do perhaps better. And so like thinking about in that context is just like 1 + 1 = 3. Like, how do we get CRO doing what he or she can do really, really well? And then on the data side, maybe leaning on, some other resources that may be excellent at it and could really help the CRO leverage that data effectively. So those are a few thoughts, I'd say.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe, rate, and review the show to help us reach more people. This show is brought to you by Force Management, where we help companies improve sales performance, executing the growth strategy at the point of sale. Check out forcemanagement.com for more information.